and then you just kind of like get in the zone, and then you just kind of like, time kind of goes away and you're just able to focus and get things done. And then if I want to do email, then all I'm doing is focusing on email. If I want to do Twitter, all I'm doing is focusing on Twitter. And in doing it kind of sequentially, instead of trying to say, I'm just going to do all the things all at the same time, things just happen faster, I think.
Go on.
I was going to ask you, so when you came out here with your wife, and I just want to go back to this because this to me is getting to one of the questions I want to ask you about when you decided to become, Paul Jarvis, right? When you were driving here with your wife, and it was, it was a drive of frustration, and relief was coming, you think, but it was frustration. When you got here and you landed, how long did it take for the two of you? And I don't know if it was a joint venture or if it was an individual process for you, but how long did it take before you calmed down and started having time to actually think?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was probably 6 months to a year, I think. It took some time. It took a lot of going to yoga and surfing every single day before work. Those two things really help slow the mind down. So I think that, in conjunction with living in the middle of nowhere, it was a process. It wasn't just like, oh my God, we're on the island now, it's common. I mean, that does happen. Like when you get off the ferry, it's a totally different vibe than when you're getting on the ferry. Kind of thing we feel every time we go to the mainland or go to Washington State, we feel that, where as soon as we land here, it's like a bit of a sigh of relief. So there is that, but to fully get to where we got to, it took months.
And in that process, did you have fear?
Yes.
A lot?
Yes.
Or a little?
Yes, all of it.
What was the fear?
That I couldn't unwind. I still have that fear a little bit, because it's not like it goes away completely. That if we were making a mistake, because all of our friends were in Vancouver. I do work remote. I've worked remote for 20 years, but I made a lot of connections in Vancouver because I moved there and lived there right when tech was starting in that city. And so I was pretty well connected, and it's like, okay, well, now I'm going to be like 6-7 hours away from that. Like, are people going to remember me to like work together kind of thing? So yeah, I mean, those fears were definitely there, and they've kind of gone away a little bit, but they're still there a bit.
How?
I don't know.
I mean, are you, because fear is a real thing, especially when you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a commercial break.
We'll be back after JinJa turns off her notifications.
Sorry.
I wish that had timed better, though. I wish that had timed better.
Sorry.
It's gonna bother
And the
me.
ringtone is like just, it's like so, but I was asking you about fear because, right, I don't remember how it's up, but fear is something that is always present with entrepreneurs. So how have you overcome that fear? Because you said it took 6 months or more to calm down, and then it took time within that process to not be afraid, but you still were, and sometimes it still rears its ugly head to you.
Yeah.
So what is your process to get rid of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a proportionate fear and disproportionate fear. So, like, if I'm swimming with sharks, I'm going to be afraid, and I should be. Makes sense. But I also think that fear can be a bit of a driver as well. Like, if I'm afraid that, I don't know, if I'm afraid that my business isn't going to make it, like if I'm just starting out, for example, then it might push me to do the work to make it happen instead of just wishing it happens. I think that fear can go away with action as well. So if I'm afraid to do something, the second I start to do it, I have a bit less fear. When I accomplish that thing, then I have less fear. So the fear can drive me to, okay, if I just start this thing, I'm going to feel a bit better, so let's do that. or if I finish this thing, then I'm gonna feel a bit better. So let's push to there. I mean, that can get a little unhealthy as well, but I do think that that can be a bit of a motivator for sure for me, where it's like, well, I want to do well. I don't need to be Mark Zuckerberg or something, but like I do want to do well. I want to provide for my family. And so I like to, push myself forward and do things like write books, make software, all the things that I do. And that makes me feel a bit better, right? So I think having that fear, as long as it's not like your heart rate is 120 from like wake up to go to bed, it's probably not healthy and that needs to be dealt with. But just a little bit of underlying fear, I think, can be a bit motivating.
That's interesting. So when you decided to go all in on this idea of a company of one, what were some of the biggest objectives that you heard from people when you were trying to explain the concept to them? Because seeing the outcome, I'm like, well, duh. this place looks great. This is sweet. You've got it running like a well-oiled machine, and you've got your rhythm, you've got your stride. But I can also understand from the perspective of the person who's still plugged into the machine, so to speak, all of the different objections. But what are some of the patterns that you hear in objections?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all heard if you're not growing, you're dying kind of thing. And I think that's just like the paradigm in business is that where growth is seen as always good, and you have to 10x the things that you're supposed to 10x. And I think a lot of that's a remnant of industrialization, where you needed more to do better. You needed to have a bigger factory to make more widgets to drive the cost down so your margins could go up. Like, that makes perfect sense. So you need growth, you need scale, you need all of those things. I think where we're at now, I would question that is necessary for a lot of businesses, especially digital businesses. Like, I don't need more employees to sell more courses. I don't need more or to sell more software kind of thing. Even the friends that I have that do some physical products that just have partnerships with different manufacturers in the States, where they can be like a 3-person business and do 7-8 figures. Like, just from, and I think this is the way that business used to work before industrialization as well, where it was just a group of small businesses all working together at different parts of the supply chain, where they could get things done in the least extractive way possible. Whereas capitalism now is the most extractive thing possible. There's a couple shareholders at the top that are trying to extract as much from their workers, from their customers, from profits, that regular people don't see any of that money. It just creates like a disparity in wealth. And so I think that's kind of the idea of company of one kind of pushes against that paradigm. But I also see it kind of working in parallel with other things that are happening right now, like with the environmental movement. Like, we can't have unlimited growth where resources are extracted, because we have a finite number of resources. So it makes sense that we don't try to grow things, like we don't try to extract all of the oil right this second. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Maybe we could leave some of it underground. So I think that people are starting to see that. I think people are as well starting to challenge the idea of what success is for them personally. So I wouldn't want to be the head of a huge company. I don't like managing people. I'm not even good at managing people. So why would I want to fill my day with managing people if I had a big company? Or why would I want to basically promote myself out of a job I like, which is writing, designing, that sort of thing, into a job of management if I hired 8, 9, 10, 200 people? So I think if we question that and we see some people do want to be managers, some people do want to have that thing that they can build and manage, and I don't have a problem with that. I just think we should think about it for ourselves. For me, I like just kind of doing my own thing in my home office and getting work done that way and working with people remotely, but I know it's not for everyone.